what would happen if you spent the $20 that you just spent at Taco Bell, if you just invested it for the next 20 years and let's just say it accumulated a 12% interest rate or something like that, right? And how much would that $20 make you in 20 years from now? It was over $8,000. And the boys were just like, what? That's so crazy.
So as you're working with all these financial advisors, not all of them are having the same levels of success. In fact, sometimes it's like the more talented, gifted financial advisors may be struggling to grow because maybe they're not as good of a marketer, right? What are some, from a marketing perspective or from a business perspective, what are some inherent traits that you see that are different between the people who are adaptable and growing versus the ones who are really struggling?
In college, I studied athletic training. And one of the things I loved about athletic training, obviously I love sports, love interacting with sports. But the reason I loved athletic training is I was fascinated by the fact that you could take this athlete who was at his prime 100%, let's say. He was performing and in the game, he got injured. Maybe it was your quarterback, maybe it was your running back, whoever. And as an athletic trainer, you had to go in and be able to quickly identify the problem. And not just on a broad stroke level, you had to pinpoint exactly where the issue was. And then you had to quickly develop, sometimes with a doctor, if it was a serious enough injury, you had to create a therapeutic plan, a rehab plan, to be able to get these athletes back into optimal performance. And within those things, there's a lot of different modalities and a lot of different types of rehab that you can do. But it was interesting that sometimes, so if you've ever heard of cryotherapy, it's the idea of taking ice to heal. And take like a sprained ankle, for example. One of the things that we would do when somebody sprained their ankle, immediately, as quickly as possible, we'd get them into ice because it helped, eliminate some of the spreading of the injury. But also, as quickly as possible, we'd have them numb up their ankle and start walking. Instead of getting into a boot, instead of doing something else and holding it up for, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever. Obviously, it depends on the severity, but as quickly as possible, we wanted them to get into the ice, numb up their leg or their foot or whatever it was, and then once it was done, start going. And the reason for that is it actually facilitated the fibers and the tendons to kind of regroup and to come back together. The reason why we don't walk, obviously, after a sprained ankle is because it hurts. The pain of exercising is painful. So we tried to numb it up so that you could go. And it was as you went that you got stronger faster. And we were able to speed up the healing process with those athletes in a much shorter period of time than if we hadn't used ice at all. So how does that relate to marketing? How does that relate to these businesses? Well, I think oftentimes businesses have bad experience with different marketing tactics. Maybe a mailer doesn't work. Maybe something doesn't work. But the ones that we have seen be the most successful are the ones that, regardless of how poor a past experience was, they just go in and they just do it. They just start exercising, if you will, that muscle of marketing. And ultimately, it's just a matter of time. Usually, it's a much shorter amount of time for those businesses to be able to have success. Take videos, for example. I think everybody understands the value of video. I haven't talked with any business owner, even outside of the financial advisory space. I haven't talked to anybody who doesn't admit that they understand the value of video. But the reason why they don't do it is because they're worried about it not being perfect. I've felt that same way at different times. And yet I realize that the fastest path to becoming good at it is to actually do it and to fail a few times and to work through those failures and to let those muscles really come together and focus in on what was wrong so that we can accelerate that progress and that growth. And so that's what we see with financial advisors. The most successful ones, the ones that are doing $20 million, $50 million, $100 million in annuity premium alone, that's not even counting their AUM or alternative solutions that they're providing, they are just robotic in the fact that they just go and they do it and they practice it over and over and over again. And they realize that where they'll be at in a year from now, having done that, is it'll be far further ahead than if they didn't do that. Here's another little example. I was actually talking to my daughter. She's 5 years old. I was talking to my daughter the other day. I had gotten some new lights for videos that we were doing, and I was just in the home office setting them up. She came in, she goes, "Dad, what are all those for?" And I said, "Oh, these are lights for some of the videos that we're doing." She goes, "For like your business advisor launch?" Mind you, she's 5 years old. And I said, "Yeah, we're doing some videos for advisor launch." She said, "You're working on advisor launch?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you've been doing that for like 2 years, Dad. Why are you going to keep doing all these videos? Or why are you going to keep doing all this stuff?" And I just laughed, because obviously she doesn't understand. But to me, I looked at that and I thought about that and I thought, it's true. I'll probably work on our business forever. Right. And where I was 2 years ago when she first had any sort of maybe memory, and maybe she doesn't remember, but it's totally different place than where we are today. And had I not done those things, had our business not done those things, we wouldn't be where we were today. But you just got to be willing to move past, but some failures initially.
It's fascinating how often we think that failure and pain and discomfort are the opposite of success. We're really, they're just a part of the success journey. And that if you're, but so many times we avoid it. We avoid failing so we avoid trying because we don't want to feel that pain. But really, like you said, like sometimes you've got to break things down, get in the ice bath, get moving again, as part of the growth. And so what I'm hearing you say is like, the people who are most successful in your industry are those who are just consistently trying, moving, and trying and adapting, because that doesn't mean that they hit home runs every time, but they're constantly trying and staying teachable and really working on their business over and over. And so I think that's a really good lesson. I love it, that sharing that and tying that back to athletic training. I'm really excited about everything that you've been sharing. And I love that you brought in a little bit of the family story, right? So as you build Advisor Launch, what is one thing that's really important to you to maintain in that business and in the business that you serve, into the holistic lifestyle? Like, what do you hope that people that work with you guys maintain in their work-life balance?
I work with some youth in our church, and we had an activity. This was a couple of years ago now, but we had an activity and we were sitting down talking about politics and economy and the government and business, and some of the young men, these were 16 to 18-year-old young men, boys, and they were talking about how they felt like the system was rigged against them, and they felt like, woe is me, never going to be able to make anything. And I sat there, I'm like, well, I wholeheartedly believe in capitalism. I wholeheartedly believe in marketing. I wholeheartedly see opportunities at almost any way I look, but yet they don't. And to be able to give that education, we sat down with them after that. I realized, okay, these guys need to see opportunity. They need to see potential. And so we sat down and we did an activity where we just went over compound interest. That's it. We just said, all right, you guys, let's look at compound interest and what would happen if you spent the $20 that you just spent at Taco Bell, if you just invested it for the next 20 years and let's just say it accumulated a 12% interest rate or something like that, right? And we said, what would that cost you, or how much would that $20 make you in 20 years from now? And I can't remember the exact number, but it was over $8,000. And the boys were just like, what? That's so crazy. And to see that light bulb go off for them when they realized that if they just worked smarter, if they had a little bit of that education to understand what would work, that all of a sudden now all these opportunities started to unfold in their minds. And I kind of see that with marketing, with the way that we help our advisors, is oftentimes they're like, I've been trying to do this thing for the last 20 years. It's not going to work. Nothing works. And almost a little bit of the woe is me mentality. And then we say, do you have a drip system? I mean, a simple question, right? It's really not a complicated question, but the answer is no. And so we say, well, let's help you do this. And we kind of showcase, even just to the smallest degree, how we could help streamline that aspect and how it'll save them this amount of time and how it'll save them that amount of time. And all of a sudden you see this light bulb and they're like, yes, I want that. I need it. Let's go. And then you start to see that change. We have a client out in Maryland who was doing seminars and webinars for years. And he's pretty meticulous about tracking and monitoring where his leads are at within the stages. And I would say he was probably more advanced than most of the businesses that we come in contact with in terms of his follow-up and processes and systems in place, but still wasn't great. And he was using multiple different tools. And he's just like, James, this is confusing to me. I don't know how to do this. And so we sat down and we just started to take it little by little. We started to implement a piece here, and then we implemented a piece there, and then we implemented a piece over here. And all of a sudden, he was just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is great that we're able to do this. And it wasn't a crazy thing. It was just really changing the perspective on doing this or doing that, and then helping them do that so that they didn't have to worry about it. That now it's alleviated a whole bunch of his time. It's made him a bunch more money because he's now in front of his clients more often, more frequently, with better content, and it's changed his business. And so I would say that that's what I hope advisors come away with in understanding, is that just because you didn't have success before or wasn't quite the level of success that you were looking for doesn't mean it can't be had today. It's just, let's sit down, let's look at it, and let's help you see where the opportunities lie. And relating that back to the athletic training example, I guess,
Sure.
that's why I loved athletic training, is because you could pinpoint a problem, find a solution, and run with it, and then they were back on the field playing. That's what we do for our advisors.
Awesome. James, it's been great getting to know you a little bit more, learning more about Advisor Launch. I encourage everybody to go check out advisorlaunch.com to learn more about their 5-step marketing blueprint and how they can help you.